We'll call the meeting to order at 7:03. This is April 20th, 2017, North Andover Board of Health. We're now called to order. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. We could all stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no public hearing tonight. The minutes were sent out yesterday. They're relatively brief and concise. I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to look at them or if you want to hold off, but we could entertain a motion to either accept or defer.
Move to accept the minutes.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Larry, you can sign the March minutes.
Thank you.
So under old business, we have an update listed for Royal Crest.
Royal Crest, as you know, we did the order letters and we had the enforcement hearing here, the appeal hearing a few months ago. We have gotten everything lined up. They actually started pulling the building permits this past week. So all the snow, all the rain, everything is all set and all gone. And they started pulling their permits this week and are starting construction. They should be done both buildings in about 6 weeks. So that's a really, really big step for us. I do have their proposals and the information that their engineering company, Cornerstone Land Consultants, had submitted to the building department. If you guys want to take a look at them, they're actually pretty pricey to do this type of work for the buildings, with one being quoted at $85,000 and one being quoted at $73,000. So big projects going on. We're looking forward to getting this definitely accomplished. And as these things arise in the future, I think they know that they're going to have to take care of them versus going through the whole, charade and coming here before you guys and trying to appeal things. But I think we're definitely off in the right step with these two buildings and getting these things taken care of. And they will be in compliance with the order letters we sent out at the end of last fall, actually. So it's taken some time, but we're finally there.
So, because they pulled a permit, there's
Yep.
an inspection requirement.
Correct. The
So
building department is
they're not
involved.
going to be filling these trenches before we've had a chance to inspect them and make sure that they're done properly?
Nope, the building department and the health department are both going to be inspecting, because they have to do it per building code as well. One of the things that I was talking to the engineer about was the foundations. Every single building they've done, they've discovered some foundation issues. So they already planned ahead for this one. They know they're going to find it. Apparently, when they built these back in the 60s or 70s?
70s, yeah.
When they filled in the interior of the foundation after the footings were done, they built ramps to get the trucks in, but they never took the ramps out. So the footings have a gap, a 15-foot gap in each building, where there is no structural support. So they've fixed every single building along the way as they do it.
Foundation? Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Yes. So that was done obviously a long time ago. Now they've been doing this, they've been finding these in all the buildings, they plan for it, they scope it out, they know they're gonna find it. And it's just a section of foundation they didn't quite finish because of the ramps. Luckily, the buildings are structurally sound. It's just now that they're exposing them, they have the opportunity to fix it, so that's part of the work they're gonna be doing.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Brian, are these the two buildings near each other?
no.
Where do they drain to then?
There are wetlands on one side of one of the buildings, and the other side, the other building, building 16, which is the other end of the property, they have part of their entire site drainage proposal they've been working on for 5 years, draining into one of those types of drainage swales and piping systems that bring it out to the big pond in front. So they've done a lot of extensive work to help this site over the years. They just haven't finished it yet, but they're getting closer.
That's good.
Great.
That's a great update. Thank
Yep.
you.
When you say the pond out in front, you mean the pond that you typically see along 114? Is
Yes. Yep.
that? So that's a planned pond? I always thought that was like
There's a bio.
overflow from somewhere.
They actually just reconstructed the entire thing. It's gonna have a bioretention cell. They fixed all of the piping that leads off-site. They've done extensive drainage work to get this thing up and running. And they're at the point now where they're actually gonna be getting the stuff online too. So the pond is in the final stages of all of the stormwater management. All the runoff is gonna be directed to this one area and then slowly released over time, versus in the past, it was overcharging the system where it couldn't handle it, so there was a lot of backup and a lot of site flooding. So with this having the capacity that they anticipate they need, then it should alleviate a lot of those problems.
So this doesn't require any action on our part, this is just
Monitor.
informational
Yep.
on.
This is just information. If you guys want to look at the scopes, they're here, the proposals, the contracts, the site plans, everything is right here. I wasn't gonna print out all the copies for you guys, but I did bring our file copies, if you guys want to look at them.
But that's a next step, but you had said, I missed something to start, you said a month ago, they had a start date for the trenches and all that, and you said that's already in effect now?
No, that was right before the big snowstorm.
Right,
They had a start date, and then the snowstorm came.
right.
And then they had to wait for everything to melt, and then we got into some colder weather. But now everything is online with conservation, with building, with us, their contractor, and they're set to go.
So do you have a start date?
They started pulling everything this week.
Okay.
So yes, they're gonna start actually construction probably next week,
Okay,
like digging and everything like that. They've already started to bring over the construction fencing and the barriers to section off the buildings as of this week.
all right. Any questions? Okay. All right, Water Department, May meeting?
Yes, I know we talked about this in the past. I did reach out to the DPW and the Water Department. We went over all of our meeting dates and had a couple of conflicts on their part, but they did have an opening, and they did have somebody available to come to the board meeting, the May 25th meeting, to do a presentation on the Water Department and the water treatment plant. I didn't know, and I can reach back out to them to, if there's anything specific you guys want to hear about, or you think the public should know about, I can put that in a request to them as to something to touch upon in that presentation. I was thinking general overview of the water treatment plant itself, the watershed protection, water treatment, maintaining the pipes in the water system itself, I think is a good general start and overview of our entire water supply.
Be most interested in lead.
Well, the annual, I don't know if you guys all got it, the annual water report just came out that has all the stats
Yeah,
and numbers.
and I read it,
Yeah.
and the numbers, as I said in the past, are very, very good.
Yes.
But I'd like to speak with whomever is here about that further.
Okay.
You'll see on a very regular basis, somewhere in the country, there was a problem. Often the problem is quite large. Look what happened in Flint, Michigan, a year or so ago, when we talked about that at that time. So just to allay any fears, concerns that people may have with lead and cadmium contamination in particular, I'd like to have them talk with us about that.
Okay, I will definitely,
And the water department can only do so much, because the old homes, like my home, built in 1688, you know,
Yeah.
the lines going to the house, a lot of lead.
we can do is replace those lines.
Yeah.
We just cut off your water, Joe, that's.
I don't drink it, to be honest with you.
You know, Brian, that's gonna be a really interesting talk. Is there any way that we can, how do you get the word out so people can actually tune in? Because they're gonna miss a really interesting topic that we've never had the water department on before, as far as I can remember, going back.
We've had them here once before that I recall.
We did?
One time, I think, yeah.
Okay. I suppose I could talk to maybe Chris McClure, the IT director, about getting something on the website, maybe a tweet or something on Facebook, social media.
I think people would appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll talk to Glenn Alt, I believe he's the one who's going to be doing the presentation from the water department about adding in a component for lead detection and some of the issues that other parts of the country have seen and why that happens. So advertise on the website and other areas. And it will be on the website from that point forward as well, in the actual meeting minutes, which is nice.
Maybe he'll have a PowerPoint even.
That would be nice. I can ask him to prepare one.
And that's scheduled for May, correct?
Yeah, May 25th. And I think it would be great for them to get on the TV and tell everybody about all the stuff
Well, they do
do.
reference us on the cover page of the report, so we probably ought to hear from them.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good. And if anybody has any other questions they'd like them to address, we can maybe direct that through you or Tony to submit to the water department in advance. But you're right, I think it'd be an interesting overview of what they're doing and sort of what a little bit of the past is, and if there are any, is there any next step in terms of water management down the line? I mean, water management is a hot button in a lot of other areas, more so than in Massachusetts, but I would think there's some kind of a broad-based management plan for the country that, you know, as our population grows, water use changes, and
Yeah.
I don't know to what degree North Andover is plugged into that.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if they give facility tours. I've been there several times over the years. It's a relatively new plant, very well operated, maintained, and I'm not aware of any major problems that there have been with discharges from the facility. The water is very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big thing they could comment on also is people discarding their household chemicals and paint, just throwing it outside in the back in the woods, and throwing their medicines out and having it slowly seep into our aquifer.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great for them to comment on, because people do, whether we like it or not, they still do contaminate their area surrounding their homes or wherever they want to dump.
Okay.
Well, the watershed around the lake is pretty well protected. There's always a measure of abuse. I know dogs can't swim in it, but I've seen a number of dogs swimming in over the years. But it's pretty well protected, the watershed. If not very well protected.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think the town does a really good job protecting construction and development in the watershed.
Yes.
Through the other departments, planning department, community development. I know they do definitely monitor the boating and the swimming and things that are limited and excluded from the lake, such as dogs. I know that they have some camps around the lake during the summer, but they're not for swimming, they're for boating, and there's no motorboats. I think they're allowed to have maybe 1 or 2 safety motorboats for some of the recreational camps that do canoeing and rowboating. So for the counselors to have 1 or 2 small engines, I think is allowed under safety guidelines, but that's about it. So all the work that's been done over the years to protect it has done a really good job.
And I noticed that the water level is very high. And
Yeah.
it's almost at norm right now. So I have been told, so I have read. I know that 6 months or so ago, it was the lowest that I had seen it, and I've lived most of my life here in North Andover.
Just driving down 133, you can see when it gets
It's
really
like little
low.
islands in the lake.
Yeah.
Well, not like, there were little islands in the lake.
There was a
Water.
beach all the way, almost,
Yeah.
It's down several feet.
Yeah.
Looks like it's back.
yeah.
Good, so we'll look forward to that in May.
And I'll try to get more questions, and I'll try to get maybe some input from the public as to things they want to hear or questions they want to ask the water department, and we can ask for them. I think it'll be a great little presentation for the town.
Okay. And then you want to talk about the public health nurse position?
Yep, we've completed all of the interviews. There is a second interview scheduled for next week, Monday to be exact, and we'll be making a decision right after that. So hopefully, we have somebody in here by the next meeting.
Now, this is a
Which I'm really looking
full-time,
forward to.
30-hour-a-week job.
Correct, 30-hour week. We just revised the entire job description and added in a lot of duties such as public education and outreach that wasn't in the description before. The description was written back in, I think, 1990, so it hadn't been updated in a long time. So we went ahead and updated it, made it a little more current, added in things that we do more on a regular basis, such as emergency planning, planning mass vaccination clinics for potential pandemics and things like that. So all of that's been included in the new description, and that's part of the criteria that we've been interviewing for, is to have that type of a background as well.
Will the public service nurse have a larger role in the senior center?
Absolutely. That's been a key topic in all of the interviews. So I've met with Irene on that a few times, and then participating in the health fair last month was completely a great thing to do. The seniors loved it, Irene loved it. I think it's something we should offer, and we're going to continue to offer on a regular basis.
Well, I think, but we want, Joe, you said full-time, it's not a, by hours, this is not a full-time position.
It's considered full-time if it
30
is
hours is
above
considered full-time.
19 hours.
Oh, okay, so different definition.
19
So-
hours full-time?
I think 19 hours is part-time. Once you get above 19 hours, you offer benefits.
But full
Retirement.
benefits start at 30 hours, I believe. Yes?
Full
No?
benefits start at 20.
Oh,
So I think 30 hours, we only work 37 and a half hours, so 30 hours is 80%. So it's,
so you
Pretty
can
much,
work for
it's
the
almost
town,
full-time.
you can work for the town 20 hours a week and you're eligible for full benefits,
How many hours in 2
medical,
days?
yep.
dental.
So if the pay the same amount, but yes.
France.
Okay,
By the way, I went to the health fair. Joe, you were there.
yes.
So I just want to thank Brian and Michelle.
Oh.
They did they had a beautiful booth. I know we took a picture
Yes, yep.
of the whole setup, and
Yeah.
it looked great.
Thank you.
They had more pamphlets and information on public health to give away. I asked them, I said, where did you get all this stuff? And they get it from the state, or wherever else you
Yep.
can grab it from.
Mass
And
Clearinghouse
they had a-
has a wealth of
Yeah, I've seen
free
those.
information to get. And
Yeah.
just to be able to get it.
The listing is available online, I've looked at it a time or two.
Okay, yeah. We had everything about opiate abuse, blood pressure, diabetes, nutrition, mosquitoes, ticks, stroke information. I mean, we had a pretty good amount of information for anybody that wanted it. We did give out a lot of information that day, which was great. We want to do that again, and we're going to participate whenever something like that goes on at the senior center. We will be there. We've also talked about doing other things in other areas of town with the information as well. So hopefully when we do have a public health nurse, we can expand that a little bit. Maybe set up a kiosk at the library or other areas of town that could use this information as well.
Yeah,
In particular, the information that was available on ticks was very good. You know, we've been talking about mosquitoes
Yeah.
for years, you know, but the ticks, it's just,
We had
but
information on,
what is it, like 300,000 people a year get Lyme disease? It's a phenomenal number,
right.
phenomenal.
It used to be.
And some people don't even know it.
Right.
And some people that have it are debilitated.
It's very
Or
serious.
worse.
If it goes undetected, it's very serious. It used to be a reportable disease under the Department of Public Health, but they're getting so many reports every year. We don't have to report it now, we just kind of keep track of it ourselves. But it used to be a reportable disease, such as like Salmonella or E. coli or some other type of communicable disease. But this was tracked by the state up until a few years ago. And they said, okay, we have enough information, don't send it to us anymore.
But if local physicians diagnose a patient with Lyme disease, they're supposed to report it to us?
They used to.
Or not even locally?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So it used to be reported from the doctor to the local health department,
Mhm.
then we would transfer that to the state.
Mhm.
And the state tracked it all up until, say, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. How many people were at the health fair?
A lot. There would have been even a lot more if the weather was good. It was just an awful day.
Yeah, it was raining.
It
Really
rained,
hard, yeah.
snow, sleet, slush. It was just awful.
They probably have about 30 booths?
Yes, easy.
Something like that,
At
yeah.
least 30, yeah. It was packed. It was really good. And there was vendors and information from all different companies and corporations and resources for everybody to go and take a look at. So it was good.
Great.
They even had a test, it's about a 20-minute test, to see if you're coming down with dementia. And
The brain test.
I took the test, and I have reservations about having taken it. Let me just leave it at that.
Did you forget
You
you
didn't
took
break the
test?
machine, though. So
I
that's good.
forgot what you said.
So you anticipate there'll be a public health nurse on board and present at the next meeting?
I
for
really hope so.
Introduction and talking?
That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay.
I guess it depends on notice needed by the individual to leave their current position and then get on board and start up right away.
So again, last time you described it as 30 hours, is there flexibility in that if there's more need or certain times a year there's more activities?
The hours will be pretty much set.
Mhm.
If something is going on and they need to be here for additional hours, then we can probably work something out. I don't think there's anything on the books as to saying, if there's an emergency and we need you, you can't come in and share 30 hours. So that'd be on a case-by-case or an as-needed basis. But for now, it's limited to 30 hours, and it's gonna be the full 30 hours, and hopefully, this position, they come in, they hit the ground running, and people see how valuable it is, and we'll go from there.
It's a salaried position?
Correct. Yep.
All right. All right. Any other comments on that? Okay. Then we'll move on to new business. So this will be an official action of the Board of Health. We're opening tonight for nominations and elections. So in the Board of Health, we have 2 officers. We have a chairman, and we have a clerk. So I'm going to open the floor for nominations for one at a time. And I think following other trends in terms of handling an election, if we only have one nomination for each office, I'll close that. We'll consider that a slate. We'll vote on the slate, and those people will be nominated by hopefully by acclaim. So at this point, I will open the floor, and I'll say up front, I'm not going to nominate myself for chairman. You can nominate yourself, or you can nominate another member. So I'll open the chair. I'll open the floor for nominations for the chairman.
I'd like to start, first of all, Tom, you've done an outstanding job as the chair for quite some time, and I'll just leave it at that. Good work.
Thank you.
Real good work. At this time, I'm certainly not interested in becoming the chairman of the Board of Health, but it remains a privilege to serve on the board. And I look around at the board members and I say, Jesus, I'm all professionals, all have families, all have jobs. I don't know how you find the time. I mean, this is a volunteer position for all of us, and it's just an outstanding board, and it's been a pleasure to be on this board. The board point person to the department for inspections of homes, restaurants, fires, etc., more often than not, has been Larry Fixler. Larry has the time to do the job that has to be done. He certainly has the interest to do the job that has to be done. He's very active in the meetings. He's always prepared for our meetings. And as such, I make a motion to consider Larry Fixler for the position of chairman of the North Andover Board of Health.
Well, thanks, Joe.
So you can give me some money right now, by the way.
I second.
$20.
I'll ask for a second of that.
I'll second that.
And then Larry, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
All right. Are there any other nominations for the position of chairman? Okay. Then we'll move on to the position of clerk. So I'm going to open the floor for nominations for the position of clerk of the Board of Health. This is a very hard-working job, which requires you to sign the minutes every meeting.
Well, as current clerk, yes, I am the clerk. But as current clerk, I want to tell you, it's a big responsibility. You have to read the minutes.
Name on the dotted line.
That's not easy sometimes.
I understand.
You have to read the minutes and submit any changes that need adjusting.
There's an unlimited liability for the accuracy of those minutes, too.
That's right, and you have to sign the correct name. So there's a lot to it.
I think Joe's up to that.
I think Joe, yeah, I'd like to nominate, first I want to thank Joe for the compliment. thank you, Joe. I really do appreciate it.
I meant every word.
And
Did I say anything good? As I said, I took this dementia test a week or two ago. Did I say anything good about you?
You're doing good.
Okay, okay.
After the meeting, you'll forget what happened, but you're doing a great job. But I also want to...
If you failed that test, your nomination is null and void.
That's true. No,
Not of sound mind and body, you can't serve as the clerk.
no, I also want to, and I've said this to Tom privately too, but I also want to second what Joe said. I've known Tom, I think I don't even remember, I think I've been 11 years, you've been 12 or 13 years. I started the year after you did.
I've been here 12 years, I think it is.
Okay, so I've known you for 11 years, and I told you this, I think last meeting or the meeting before, I said I found you an outstanding chairman throughout all the years, because it's been, we've had stressful moments throughout the years on what we've had to do, and I think you've handled it, done an exemplary job in handling yourself and also maintaining the focus of the board and of the department. So I just want to congratulate you for what you've done.
Thank you.
I'd like to pile on.
Second, third.
And I have to say that,
There are
Tom,
cookies down.
Yeah, thanks for bringing in the cookies,
not
Tom.
only an exemplary job, but you've really done just an exceptional job. And I think you've, just thank you for your service. It's been outstanding to work with you and having you as our chair. It's been fantastic.
What I appreciate too is the little things. If there's a major issue of concern, then you keep all of us apprised of what's happening. You call us, you speak with us, we discuss, and you go that extra mile.
Absolutely.
You don't have to,
Absolutely.
but you have done that.
Well, I'm going to give him a...
Larry, are you sure you want to take this over?
No, and, so I wanted to finish what I was going to say. I was going to nominate Joe as
But you've reconsidered, is that what you're clerk?
Sounds like a conspiracy.
Pending the results of his convention.
as clerk, for the position of
Contingent upon.
clerk. And of course, if I can't make a meeting, which is extremely unusual unless I'm in the hospital or something, Joe would have to lead the meeting.
Well, the hospital's your home away from home,
Would you
isn't
be,
it?
would you be willing to do that, Joe?
Sure.
Okay, so I suggest Joe for clerk, and I nominate Joe.
I second that nomination.
Joe, do you accept that nomination?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations for the position of clerk of the Board of Health? Anybody in the audience? All right. Hearing no further nominations, I'll close the nominations for tonight. So we have a slate before us for the position of Chair of the Board, Larry Fixler, and for Clerk of the Board, Joe McCarthy. I'm going to put that before us, and unless there are any further comments, if there are no objections, I will consider that vote by acclaim. So thank you to our new officers. These are positions that will become effective as of June. I think that's what we announced last month, so don't try to step into my shoes too soon.
Tom,
But-
what's the duration?
Till next year.
It's really a one-year term that we as a, I think it's even either in the charter or the bylaws, but we can make our own policy to make it a term of X number of years, but we're actually, I think, burdened with the requirement of reappointing
Revoting.
or voting every year, which was put off far too long. But it doesn't mean we can't put someone into a position for several years or make a policy. But if I recall correctly, in the fog of my memory, there's actually, it's in the charter or the town bylaws that boards are required to do this annually.
I did speak with our town manager about that several weeks ago, and he says it's pretty much up to the board or the boards to decide. Because Larry and I have been on the board for such a long time, it's just a smooth transfer. But if you had someone that was on the board for a relatively short period of time, it would be difficult for the chairman. You need 2 years.
Right, well, so I think Tom's point is valid. By our allowing Tom to continue in the chair, in a sense, we have reelected him by acclamation. But I think what he's saying is that we just have a positive duty to take the matter up, take an official vote once a year. We can continue to keep people in the position so that they can mature and develop, and there's no prohibition on us keeping somebody in that position, but the town charter really does require us to positively affirm that. The previous years, we can say, have been done by acclamation because nobody's objected, but we really do need to take a positive action on a yearly basis.
I didn't know that. We're 11 years
There-
late.
Yeah, again, my recollection is that the charter says we have an election every year, but it does not say that the positions change and there's no term limit in it. A point well taken from the town manager that for me to have been chair for 10 years is far too long for a lot of reasons, and I think it's a good idea to move it around, whether, and it depends how well you do, Larry, you know, you gotta step up here, but whether we choose to sort of, after a while, the board, in its wisdom, choose to keep an officer for 2 years, 3 years, or, but again, whatever, but I think annually to do an assessment and, like you say, a positive action is the best practice way to go.
Fine.
Clerk for 5 minutes, you're already trying to be clerk for life, aren't you?
Yeah. Joe's
Power
leading,
play.
he's leading the meeting.
Like the power.
My only fear is Joe's gonna try to get me impeached.
You never know.
I don't know if there's an impeachment clause.
I don't think that's
So
in
that means
North
as a clerk,
Andover.
that means I have to critique the minutes, it means I have to know how to read. Oh, okay.
All right, having put that away pretty quickly. There's nothing listed under communications, announcements, and discussion. I wanted to ask you, Frank, last time we talked about the bill that was being considered by Mass Medical Society on the donating leftover medicine, I think, I just saw a notice that I don't remember the name of it, but the drug disposal day is coming up in the next few weeks, National Drug Disposal Day. Is there any progress on that? I think that's sort of an interesting thing to think about
Right.
as that moves along.
So what Mass Medical is doing right now is it's considering taking a advocacy position on drug recycling, and it basically has 3 parts. And because it's now published in its manual, I'm more at liberty to discuss it. But basically, there's basically 3 components. One is nursing home drugs, which are often in bubble packs or blister packs. So they're basically, until you push the tablet out of the blister pack, you know, it's sealed. And so nursing home drugs, we actually did have legislation in the state, and it was either allowed to sunset or expire. And I did speak with the representative who sponsored the bill, and he couldn't tell me why they repealed it. But it was repealed about maybe 5 years ago. So we used to recycle nursing home drugs in Massachusetts, but we don't anymore. So that was one section. The other part was basically drugs that are just routine drugs that are done in the office. And I gave an example of a drug that we use for hepatitis C. I had a patient whose roommate died during his treatment and had an entire month's supply of Harvoni, which is worth approximately $28,000. And he asked me if I wanted to take possession of it, and I said I couldn't. I said I can't legally recycle it or give it to another patient, even if they don't have insurance. And then there was a third example where the oncologist, Dr. Corey, had brought the matter to me about oncology drugs. And I had spoken with somebody at the American Medical Association, and she had given me information about legislation that had passed in New Mexico, amending their Drug and Cosmetic Act to allow for oncology drugs to be recycled and repurposed. Oftentimes, people who have cancer, unfortunately, sometimes die during their treatment, and those drugs have been dispensed, and there's just no way to recycle them. These are ridiculously expensive drugs. You know, it could be something as simple as, you know, somebody takes the first dose of like an oral chemotherapy drug, and it's just poorly tolerated. They say, I'm not going to take that. Well, you have 29 days of medication that's worth tens of thousands of dollars. Well, this is in aggregate, you know, what Dr. Corey had described to me as billions of dollars. So it's going to go through a process. We have our annual meeting of on the 27th through 29th of April. So we will have an advocacy position probably by that time. Whether we decide to go forward with the resolution the way it's written, or whether we decide to refer it for study or have it come back, I don't know how the the society is going to dispose of the matter, but hopefully it'll come out with an action item and an advocacy position. I think we'll be in a stronger position to, to speak to our representatives once that's occurred. We'll have a 25,000 physician organization behind us, so.
Frank, that resolution that you shared with all of us from New Mexico, is Massachusetts considering piggybacking on that, making some changes to it?
Not yet. So where it is right now is that the State Medical Society, which I'm an officer of, is considering, through its own internal processes, whether to assume an advocacy position. Once that's done, they will oftentimes go to a state legislator and usually offer to co-author or sponsor some sort of legislative action. It could also be regulatory too. It doesn't always have to be legislation. Sometimes regulation is a more efficient way of going about it, because you don't have to actually have somebody to take a vote on it.
How about the federal government? For example, tobacco, we discussed raising the age from 18 to 21 for over a long period of time. And that's done throughout many of the communities in our nation. Now the federal government is looking into it.
Right.
And they may decide that it's going to be 21 years old, period, around the nation. What about the federal government when it comes to this matter here on recycling drugs? Do they have are they looking at it at all, or are they leaving it up to the states?
I don't know if they're looking at it. The information that I found researching it is mostly through an organization that's called the National Association of State Legislatures. And I think it's NASL.org. I believe that's what it is, and that's where I got most of my information. Turns out that about 30 states allow drug recycling, and about 20 don't. Massachusetts is one of the few that doesn't. The states surrounding us, the New England states, all allow it to some degree or another. And it does seem to hit those three areas. Oncology drugs, routine pharmaceuticals, and then nursing home drugs are a special class because they're all blister packed and they're kind of like in a special, I guess, single dose, but they're in strips. And oftentimes, people in nursing homes, they die. And you have all these drugs that have been basically earmarked with the patient's ID number, and those are perfectly good drugs. They could
Those may be diabetic or
yeah, there could be,
hypertensive
it
type
could be
drugs or-
metformin, it could be losartan, it could be any of these drugs that are commonly prescribed. Atorvastatin, which is a cholesterol medicine. Why can't these things be used for other patients? And it's literally billions of dollars that go discarded, incinerated. They can't be reused for another patient.
So if the law goes through in Massachusetts, arguably, you would be in a position to accept these drugs and give out these drugs at no cost and still have liability protection.
Well, yeah, so there's, I actually should have brought the resolution, because in the whereas is all those things are hit. But if you look at different states, there's 5 or 6 things that are in common. One is that the drugs are unadulterated. They're in a sealed container. They're not opened up. Second thing is a pharmacist is usually certified that the drug hasn't been adulterated and that it's, to the best of their ability, to detect it as genuine. That the drug has been in a chain of custody that can be audited, and that nobody's making any money off of it. There may be some nominal charges to certify these sorts of things, but nobody's going to basically resell these drugs.
Yeah.
So those are the common features that are common in different states. But this is a matter that seems to be regulated at the state level, and so it has to be done at the state level.
So they're not looking at prescription vials, they're looking at blister pack products.
Well, they're looking at blister pack products and also things that come in a sealed, that
Yeah.
are in a sealed container. Something that still has the tamper-resistant wrap on top
Yeah,
of it.
I used to make the blister pack drugs, the blister packs themselves. Once you heat seal it, there's a machine for it.
Yeah.
It's as sealed as if you had bought a bottle of aspirin on the shelf, literally.
And there have to be some safeguards, and there's some safeguards in there. First of all, the patient has to basically give informed consent to receive them, so that, they have to understand that this drug was obtained through a donation program and that it may have left the chain of usual custody.
Yeah, it's not dispensed by a pharmacist,
Right.
It's been recycled,
So
literally.
I think a lot of those safeguards are in there, and certainly if legislation were to come forward, it should really include those. So I think it's a little bit premature because there actually doesn't exist legislation that's pending in Massachusetts for this. But the idea is that what we would like to do is get a strong advocacy organization that has a lot of, legal and technical expertise to be able to bring something forward, but you have to get the body to agree that this is something that they want to do, and that they're willing to spend the resources to do it.
So would it be dispensed by the physician?
Well,
Because physicians don't have dispensing now, do they?
well, no, we're allowed to dispense samples,
Samples, okay,
right, and I think that would probably mirror something on that idea.
something like that?
In Massachusetts, you're allowed to dispense samples, but controlled substances, I don't think you are through
No,
through an
and
office.
that's a good point.
As a take-home,
None of the existing state laws, these don't apply to controlled substances, so this is not going to be repurposing oxycodone or something like that.
I think dispensing it, like you're talking about, is just a wonderful idea, absolutely wonderful idea.
in terms of getting from point A to point B on things like this, so sometimes it actually works easier if you can just get it done through regulatory process, through departments or whatever, because, I mean, for one, the 2-year state cycle has just started in January, and there's sort of this short window when legislation can be filed, and then it closes about 2 or 3 weeks long, and then outside of that time period, it's harder to file a bill unless you have tremendous momentum or
Right.
support
There's like
behind
an
it.
unanticipated need. I
Right.
mean, really, that filing deadline has already passed, so, it's got to be something that just is really compelling.
But then the bill would generally, a lot of times in sort of hand flow or sort of something that would come through, say, perhaps the state DEA, for instance. The state would pass a law that would say, we allow them to do this, but then the state, again, just using the DEA as an example, has to develop all these logistics of this. But if there's no prevention from them in law, just using the state DEA as an example, if they would come up with a process and put something into effect as a regulation, it kind of work internally, and then you're not so subject to the whims of legislation, how are we gonna call it, plus or minus, or whims of votes and so on from the State House.
If all goes well, and this goes forward, what's your feeling of the element of time?
2 years.
2 years? Do you think it'll pass right now? Is that hard to say?
Well, I've kind of been in some of the preliminary discussions, and there have been some concerns that, things that have been brought up here. And it's just a matter of just educating people about what it's trying to accomplish. I think the best way to think about things like this is like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish, and what's the best way to get it done? And so right now, it's just making clear people understand first what we're trying to accomplish, and then the debate will be about how best to accomplish it, what the best way to go about it is, whether it's legislation, regulation, or whatnot. And, right now, as Tom has pointed out, that filing deadline for the current legislation calendar, which is a 2-year cycle, is closed. It's not closed, but the filing deadline has passed, so it's not like you can't get stuff in, but it's just really hard. You want to get stuff in really right away.
And you're in competition with there are about 5,000 bills that get filed in the state every cycle. And it's about a 2 or 3 week window in January, every 2 years, it's a 2-year legislative cycle. And they have a formal session and an informal session, and like Frank said, you can file a bill if there's an overwhelming need or an emergency or something you can declare within the bill, but that requires other stuff to happen. And oftentimes even the best of bills are hard to get passed within one cycle because of all these questions come up, and it goes through a committee, and then it goes, oftentimes go to a second committee, and then there's the committee of the third reading, and then it goes to the House, and then it goes to the Senate, and then the governor has to somehow agree with all of it. So it's a lot of work to get bills passed, even the best bills.
Yeah, even, I think we were given, I sat on the legislation committee at Mass Medical Society, and what I have learned in my 4 or 5 years on that committee is that in order to get something from an idea to actual legislation, typically is 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
So,
If you do something in one cycle, you're really doing something.
yeah.
Oh.
So it just, it's a process, and, that's why sometimes you try to short-circuit it with regulations, whenever you can. So, that's kind of
But
where
the
it is.
concept certainly has tremendous merit, and we'll stay on.
Yeah, I'll keep you up to date. In fact, I will, because the handbook has been published, I can actually show you what it's a page and a half long, what it contains, and I think you'll find it interesting. And it's well referenced, there's links that you can look up if you're so inclined.
Okay.
And speaking of handbooks, recently, and I think all of us had received by email, a handbook on marijuana from our town manager. I think it was like 60 pages. I haven't read it yet.
It was really long. I opened it, I said, I'll
I
read
didn't
this
see it.
quickly. It was,
Oh, you did? Oh, really?
Where is it?
I got
it
it.
came as an email from him
Yeah.
on the,
When?
his email
About a week or so ago.
server.
Oh, I
I
never saw
I
it.
can send it
No.
to, maybe to Tony, and she can send it around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
It was like you, I said, oh, this will be a quick read. I opened it, it was like,
Yeah, so I said, I'll put that aside for now, yeah. But that was nice of him to do that.
Well, just, I don't go over 60 pages, but what was the
I haven't read it.
gist of, oh, okay.
I just looked at the pages and when I go, whoa, I'll look at this later.
Is it-
yeah, I'm in the same way. I opened it, said, oh, I'll come back to it.
Yeah, I'm just looking through my town email right now, I don't see anything from him. So, yeah, I'd love to see that. That
Tonight,
was actually
Tony,
an
I can
item
send
of,
that to you, and you can send it around.
that was actually an item of new business I wanted to just kind of bring up, and I don't know what the board wants to do with this, but we do have the town warrant has been published, and there's an article that's getting a lot of discussion on changing the zoning law at the 1600 Osgood to allow cultivation of cannabis.
There's actually a report, I mean, it's even been put up in a lot of places just specifically about that. It's even been on Facebook.
Yeah, well, that's.
The sort of the breadth of the proposal. I sort of thought about that ahead of time also. Should we consider that? Or is it, I won't say valid, but it would be valuable for us to take a position on that, or at least to consider it. I think that would be a good topic of discussion for the next meeting.
So, where are we now? It's April 20th. The town meeting is on May 16th, so we will not have
May or
another.
June, I'm sorry.
Oh, is it June?
No, it's May.
May?
Yeah, I don't think we have another meeting before it.
No.
Is it May
No.
16th? It's town
No.
meeting?
It's May 16th, right?
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
is, ma'am. I won't be here, I'll be working.
You were?
in New York.
You're right, sorry.
Yeah, so I have May 16th, so if we're going to have a position, we don't have to have a position, but if we're going to have one, we kind of need to have a position now.
Yeah, it's called
Well,
special
I
meeting
don't know
between
the,
now and then.
Hmm?
That was called a special meeting between now and then.
That's true.
As long as we post it and advertise it,
Right.
then you guys are more than
Yeah,
welcome.
we
to-
can't debate it or make a position by email, but if, can you forward something on Facebook? I know I've seen it several times on Facebook, and I can probably
Oh,
find it in other
I've seen it, I've
places.
actually commented on it myself. I had.
We could send that around. So the thing that came from Andrew about marijuana, which is an informational thing, it's not specifically about Osgood, but we can find a thing about Osgood. And then again, we shouldn't debate back and forth about it if we're gonna consider taking a position, but if we look at the information, say we'd like to, then we ought to have a meeting to do that.
Mhm. Give me 3 days' notice, we can get it posted, reserve the room, whether it's this one or another one, and get that taken care of.
so it would be whether or not we agree with the concept of cultivating marijuana in our town, is that?
Well, we would take a position on the
Of that
specific
magnitude.
warrant article.
Yeah.
Is this a zoning question?
It's a zoning
zoning,
question,
yeah.
but what it's asking is it's asking to amend the zoning regulation to allow the marijuana district to include 1600 Osgood. So the marijuana district right now is limited to it's the same adult entertainment trash district.
Holt?
It's basically, it's an
Holt.
overlay,
Ah.
and it's all basically Holt Road. It does not currently include the Osgood property at 1600 Osgood.
It's down the end of Holt Road, Holt Road and Clark Road, little intersection right there.
Right, so what they're asking is they're asking for the zoning bylaw to be amended, which requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting. because the matter is on expanding the cannabis zoning, I don't think it's unreasonable for the Board of Health to have a position on it,
And this isn't,
unless we can't come to an agreement.
this won't be a minor operation. They're talking about, I think it's like 1 million square feet there.
It's very big.
Well, actually, the issue is they want to amend the zoning regulation before they actually have a proposal of what they want to do. So there's actually no proposal. Other than that, they want to have the zoning regulation amended so that they can go out and see if there's interest in the marijuana-related business industry to see if
Certainly
they
a
can do
concern that I would have.
hydroponics.
So this is not being pushed forward by an active interest in doing this?
It's being
It
pushed
is.
by the property owner so that
property
they
owner of
can
the space.
solicit, so that they can go out to the marijuana cannabis industry and solicit, saying, hey, we have zoning, we have industrial space, you can do hydroponics in this space, we've got 1 million square feet, or how many square feet of factory space they have.
So he has a potentially usable space, but not someone to do the logistics, to sort of do the
So-
project.
I guess I struggle to see how this is a health issue, frankly, in terms of the zoning question itself. I mean, the state's already taken a position that this is.
It's been
the
voted
new-
on.
Right.
It's been voted on.
So, is it the health of a growing operation, or is it the health of cannabis that you want?
So there's a few different.
Because I know nothing about the science of cannabis, so I'm not in a
So
position to say whether that's.
first of all, is that property is it's self-contained with regard to its water supply and its subsurface water disposal, right?
Yep, goes directly to GLS too.
They don't have on-site septic? Okay. All right. So there's two issues. One is the water supply, because they would source the water from either the town or from on-site wells.
I'm not sure, I thought it was all town water, but I can look into that.
Right. So there's an issue there. The second issue is the disposal. Then the other issue is that it's a psychoactive drug.
Which is now legal in the state of Massachusetts.
Right.
And remains illegal on the federal level. And the issue is one of the issues that I brought up to Phil DeCollegiero when I spoke with him is that the banking issues,
The what issue?
the banking issues.
Banking?
So how do you run a marijuana-related business
You don't.
in the banking system? You can't.
No, there's a few.
It's cash
that
only.
Bank.
Well, there's what's called, the latest that I've heard is that there's regulatory discretion, is how they're getting around it.
So my
Which is-
concern
which
that
is
I
not
would
the
have is
same
if
as-
Attorney General Jeff Sessions says, no, we're going, no marijuana.
Well, we're gonna enforce federal law.
We're gonna enforce-
and then,
exactly.
Then it's over.
It is.
It's
I
over.
mean, he's talking about doing that right now for sanctuary cities. Marijuana is, I think, a much smaller issue than the sanctuary cities, although I could be mistaken on that. But he's talking about enforcing the laws that are in place right now from a federal perspective.
You know what Ed said? It's been voted on, it's legal. What would we'd be taking a stand on, like what you said, on whether or not to amend the zoning bylaws? What does that have to do with us?
Right, just struggling for, I mean, if you wanted to have a board position that we're against cannabis, then, okay. But I'm not sure how.
This is like further confirmation that there's so many questions when it concerns marijuana.
Well, there's no science, right? I mean, is there any science supporting any of this? The medical claims or not claims? I mean, also.
Oh, no,
I believe there is medically, there's a lot.
There's medical,
Yes.
there's science supporting medical claims. Cannabidiol, is anti-inflammatory, that probably has some use in neuropathic pain syndromes and things like that. No, there's science there. There's also science that says that maybe it increases the risk of psychiatric disorders among adolescents.
Right.
So, I mean, there's good and bad. I mean, it's not a surprise to anybody.
Right. But I guess I don't view it any differently, given what we're talking about, in the context in which we're talking about. I don't view it any differently as whether, we should open a strip club at Osgood.
That wouldn't be a health issue?
And that's not a
either?
health issue.
No. Now, this is a zoning bylaw issue. That's all it is.
That's,
I don't know if it's a,
Well, a strip club may have some health issues. we gotta-
well, exactly, notwithstanding that.
I don't know, but, I don't know if the board, I don't know.
But
if
I
this is-
think it's within the, I mean, we could send the information around, we can sort of do a little back and forth as to whether we would like to get together and talk about it. I think we should, if we do decide to take some kind of position on it, we shouldn't debate that, but we should have some commentary as to whether we think it's reasonable for us to do that or not.
That's fine. Yeah, just for your information, when I was practicing pharmacy, they have tablets that have the active form of THC. So I would dispense those. You know, they're considered Class 2 narcotics, but for whatever reason the patient needed them, I would dispense them to patients that needed it. And
I'll take a look for it.
they work.
See what we can do with that.
I've seen it on Facebook several times.
Okay.
And as a side note, ex-Patriot tight end Hernandez, he killed himself in jail. And there was reason to believe, I read today, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, that it could be a marijuana substitute called K2. And it has a lot worse side effects than marijuana. It can be a lot deadlier, so. instead of
Well,
bringing
that's
up.
actually a different topic because it's a synthetic cannabinoid, and a cannabinoid is similar to an opioid. An opiate is a drug derived from the opium plant, and it's either chemically substituted or something like that. An opioid is a drug like tramadol, which has no chemical resemblance to opium at all, except that it binds the the opiate receptor, the mu receptor. So it basically has its action through the receptor that opium binds. So a cannabinoid like K2 is a chemical that's basically made from chemical engineering by cracking organic compounds that just has affinity for the cannabis receptor. So there are cannabinoid receptors, or an endocannabinoid system that was worked out about 20 years ago that these drugs have a high affinity for. And when you stimulate them with a natural cannabinoid like cannabis, they have a certain type of action. When you stimulate them with an organic chemical, they can sometimes have unpredictable actions. These drugs have been known to cause people to become, like, at least for a period of time, completely psychotic and just. So it's I think it's a different issue. I don't think it's really pertinent to what we're discussing. But the point's well taken that these drugs do have some effects that can produce psychotic effects in some people at some doses. Anyway, leave it at that.
Just under, I'll say announcement, just so it's a matter of public matter, public information, we did receive recently the 2017 Best Management Practice Plan for North Andover. So in essence, that provides an overview of the Northeast Massachusetts Mosquito Control and Wetlands Management District plan for the town of North Andover. It shows the budget for the year and the specific plans. The time of refusal of local measures at particular home sites has come and gone. Their management actually starts pretty soon. Once we get into the spring and all ice is gone and there are a lot of trenches and catch basins around that have gotten filled up over the winter with leaves and junk and stuff, they go around and spend. People are just out in trucks and rakes and cleaning those out because that's a great breeding place for mosquitoes. So they do that, and they do a local bacterial treatment that goes into those things to provide a bacterium product that goes through the season of breeding to help prevent and reduce catch basin mosquito breeding. Through the year, we provide other things that happen, but this part of it may already be happening now or will be starting to happen very soon. My recollection is it's pretty early in May they start that part of the work. So we may see trucks around with guys that are just, again, raking out the catch basins and opening up the drainage, so.
Now, I live in the corner of Dale Street and Russet, and there's two catch basins on Russet, right near Dale, that have been overflowing, and I spoke with Tim Willett, Department of Public Works, really helpful. And there's been a number of people there over the last couple of days. It's simply plugged. So you can see that there is a small pond, and these vernal ponds you have to be concerned about because they don't have any fish in them. So so the mosquito larvae, they can grow. The fish don't eat them. So they're addressing that problem right now, but that area is not unique. I imagine there are a number of other areas in our town that have the similar problem.
Past years when, not the person who was here a year ago, but past chair of this district have been here, the number of catch basins in North Andover, I think, counts in the hundreds. It's not, 50 or 70, there are hundreds of them around that they go out and clear out. So there's a lot of work that happens by them to reduce this as much as possible.
And they'll do the entire region as well, so they're going out and they'll be
Right, well, they
doing-
do all the towns that are in the district, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a big undertaking, but it really works. I think they wait until all the streets are swept and all of the
Okay.
sanding, which is now. Now the streets are getting, by the next couple of weeks, the streets will be swept. They'll clean out all the catch basins and then they'll put in the larvicide. And that lasts throughout the season too, which is really good.
So, Brian, how does it work? We've had a lot of rain in the last 3 weeks. Lake Chitchut looks like it's back to normal.
Yep.
So with all that rain, does that tell us that we're gonna have a worse, and we've had a mild winter in a sense,
Yes.
a
So
worse season?
I haven't seen the projections yet, but typically with environmental factors like that, with the amount of rain, if it doesn't get too hot and it doesn't dry up too much, then yes, you can definitely anticipate a serious mosquito season. But I'm gonna look and talk to mosquito management, hopefully the next couple of weeks, get a game plan for the bulk of the season, and we'll be underway with the larviciding and then getting, the IPM plans are being done now. The town clerk got the exclusion notice a couple weeks ago, last month, for anybody that wanted to exclude their property. That's done strictly through the town clerks now. So yeah, we're getting ready for the season. This is definitely something we want to keep our eye on.
I mean, they're out. I've seen swarms of mosquitoes.
Yep. They're starting.
They're looking
Obviously, when it's colder like tonight,
You're right.
activity is very, very low. But when you get the 85-degree days like we had recently, then they're definitely out and about.
Now, I had looked out my window the other day. I saw the local 102 mosquito union, and they were trying to get in my house. So they're there.
Yes, they are.
That's right.
Does this plan get posted on our site? I mean, this is,
It's on the state website.
okay.
I
As
can
long
get
as
it,
it's
I
accessible.
can get it posted on our website as well.
As long as it is accessible, but if somebody called and wanted to see that, you could point them to.
Okay.
All right. Okay, is there any other announcement or discussion that anybody would like to bring up? All
I
right.
just want to thank everybody for their confidence in their vote for me to be chairman. So thank you very much.
And as you said, thank you for having been such a good chairman.
I'll have a cookie in honor of that thank you. All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn tonight?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.